Hello everyone and welcome to another brilliant sport and lifestyle biz here on your real feel-good radio, UK Health Radio. Well, it's the first show in May and already we're into the third of the year and we've got a blockbuster for you. We've got top cricket commentator Mel Jones, all the way from Australia, about how she got into sports, how she loved playing cricket and now how she's got a second successful career behind the microphone. We hope you enjoy that. We have our SLB Sports Roundup and we hope you're going to enjoy the show. Well, today, everybody, I'm joined by cricket superstar, not only on the pitch, but now from the commentary box, it's Mel Jones. Hi, Mel, how are you?
Superstar, I like that. I can handle that one.
You
I'm
are.
very well with an intro like that.
Brilliant. It's great to hear from you. Great that you're doing this for us. And yeah, you are. We'll come on to it a bit later in the interview, but you've got two successful careers, which is amazing. And you get paid to do what you love, which is even better. But just so the listeners get to know you a bit more, if that's okay, if I could just strip it back to the start. And you were born in England, moved to Australia when you were just 3 months old. So had an upbringing in the fabulous climate and culture. Personally, in sport, a winning culture. You don't see many Australians that don't fight tooth and nail. You were introduced to cricket at high school, but let us know how that came about and whether your love was instant or it grew on you.
Oh, yeah, really good question. I think so. My mum's Aussie. She's from a very small country town in Australia called Rutherglen, and she went to England to teach and travel, and she met my dad over there, and Dad was from Trinidad. He moved over to England in the 50s. So, yeah, born in Barnstable. It's where my mum was teaching at the time, but she was always planning on coming back home to Oz. So once she was fit to travel, the two of us got back, and look, my first touch point for cricket was like pretty much Australia, whether they played for Australia or not. Backyard cricket. I was in my grandparents' backyard with 6 male cousins who were all predominantly older than me, so I bowled a lot, didn't get to bat too much, but just fell in love with it because it was the pure element of play. You know, yeah, it was a sport and it was competition, but you made up your own rules. You know, you couldn't hit Par's chrysanthemums, his prized chrysanthemum flowers, or that. You know, you played all day. The only time you came in was probably to check out the cricket on Channel 9 at the time, in order to have a bite to eat kind of thing. So it was just hours and hours of just pure enjoyment. So yeah, the love of the game started very early on.
That's lovely to hear. Two things that I'd like to pick up on. First of all, I've got family that live in Combe Martin, which is probably about 12 miles from Barnstable. Quite bizarre. And more importantly, talking about cricket, a lot of the female footballers that I interview got love from playing with their siblings, but again, they were majority boys and they got stuck in goal. So it was quite interesting to hear that you just got bowling all the time.
There's a common theme, isn't it? And also because of, you know, mum and dad coming from two different countries, all the boys were always Team Australia and I was always Team West Indies.
Of course.
There's a point of difference too. So I actually grew up following the West Indies cricket team because Australia certainly wasn't the sort of multicultural place that it is now.
Right.
So, you know, I always grew up hoping I'd play for the West Indies or, you know, cheering on the West Indies rather than Australia.
Obviously, two famous cricketing nations.
Yeah, 100%. Dad played a little bit of cricket. He was sort of middle six, not first class, lower grades, but he knew a lot of the West Indian cricketers. So he knew Malcolm Marshall and Joel Garner.
Wow.
And there was quite the cohort of West Indians back then. So whenever they toured, he organised tickets for me to go and watch them. And, you know, Wisdom Cricket magazine signed by them. So there was a real sort of connection to my dad. It was probably that connection that really kept me involved and loving the game as well.
And how amazing. I mean, two names you threw up there, a little bit like certain gentlemen we're going to perhaps talk about towards the end of the interview. Someone else that destroyed us, the English, yet we still managed to love.
Yeah. That's it. I think, look, to be honest, I think that's the beauty of sport. As much as you say that you're going to grow up and support a team, whether it's, you know, Chelsea in the football or, you know, Australia in the cricket, I think the beautiful part of sport is the theatre of it, isn't it? And you can appreciate skill and talent and entertainment. So even though that player might be on an opposing team, I think it's okay to say no, that you thoroughly enjoy watching them play or watching them play against your side.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what sport should be, you know, and how it should be watched and supported. So yeah, lovely words. Thank you. Going on to when you sort of started and perhaps had people to look up to. Obviously, your dad was a role model for you with the cricket, and you've mentioned some great names there that you probably looked up to. I can imagine you steaming into your siblings as Marshall or Garner when you were made to bowl. But anyone else you were looking up to? Any other role models?
Well, it was tough back then because I didn't even know there was an Australian women's cricket team.
Right.
When I sort of was going through school and started playing even club cricket. And they were world dominant back then. It's just that there was just no visibility of them whatsoever. So all my role models were either male cricketers or female athletes that I could sort of see myself in. And so it was people like Merlene Ottey, who was, a sprinter for Jamaica back in the day. I loved Daley Thompson, who, decathlete for England. So, a lot of the role models for me in sport were people of colour, which meant that typically they were people from other countries as well. So it wasn't until I sort of got into senior club cricket and had a couple of Australian players at my club that I then recognised that there was an Australian women's cricket team. And so Sharon Treadway was my idol growing up, Australian all-rounder, quick bowler. She played at my club and she was an absolute superstar, Australian Cricket Australia Hall of Famer now. So it wasn't until I really got into the system that I knew that there was some female cricketers to look up to.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear that, it was totally invisible. Now being the best side in the world by, I think we can safely say, quite a long way, even if the gap is closing in a couple of areas. How did you make that jump, if it was invisible, from cricket at school to national team?
Yeah, luck. And I say that in a way, I don't like elite athletes saying they were lucky getting picked for Australia, because there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. But the connection points were purely luck. Well, first and foremost, my mum, who's not a sports person at all, was my biggest supporter, and she drove me everywhere and did all the things that most athletes sort of talk about that their parents sort of gave up for them.
Yeah.
I went to a high school where I had a geography teacher. He was English, loved his cricket, and got a girls' cricket team together for our school team. And he loved it so much, he took us on trips to New South Wales and then off to New Zealand, and he got us linked in with local club sides.
Right.
Turns out, a few years after I left high school, he had a son late in life, and it was Peter Hanscom who ended up playing cricket for Australia.
Yeah.
As sort of the, top order, middle order bat as well. So his dad was John Hanscom, my geography teacher. So I could have gone to a different high school, or he might not have taught there, but it was he and a PE teacher at the school, Deb Noonan, that were just, put in above and beyond really to get us involved. So once you sort of get to a club, it becomes a little bit easier in the sense of you're sort of in a pathway and you can get picked up by state junior teams and the like.
They say things happen for a reason, and that's just, again, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, the universe working in wonderful ways.
Especially, again, both of your sort of careers being in the sport. Who'd have known? I mean, obviously you had cricket in you anyway because of, as you said, you were practising with family. But yeah, that's just brilliant. Lovely to hear. And again, as you said, the universe just working its magic almost. So that's brilliant. So you debuted for Australia in 1997. Obviously, that must have been fantastic for you. How did it feel when you first got to hear about it, and then when obviously you pulled on the colours or the whites?
Yeah, we just finished our state final series. So Victoria v New South Wales were at the SCG, which was huge for us because we never got to really play on the big grounds. And yet again, unfortunately, New South Wales had beaten us, so we're all a little bit in the doldrums, to be honest. And we were in the members' pavilion for the final function. And we sort of knew that the Australian team was going to get announced. I had no thought whatsoever that I was going to get picked. So I can vividly remember they had prawn cocktails there, and I'd never really had them before. And I was hoeing into this prawn cocktail when the Australian team was announced and missed my name getting called out. And people were like, "You just got picked." And I thought that they were taking the mickey out of me. I'm like, don't be silly. I was too interested in my prawn cocktail at that time. So
priorities.
Everyone was just looking at me going, "You got to go up." Yeah, massive surprise. Couldn't believe it. I can remember getting to the airport still and physically introducing myself to players because we just really never met. You sort of play against them on the field, but that was sort of it kind of thing. So it's a huge surprise, completely over the moon. Yeah, there's something very, very special. My first selection was for a tour. We didn't play still don't play a lot of test matches, so it was sort of all one days back at that stage. So the opportunity of, pulling on the green and gold, which you sat back and you watched so many athletes through Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games and Aussie teams do in the past. And to think that you actually had that tracksuit on now was something pretty special.
Lovely. Lovely to hear. And obviously you built a fantastic career. We're going to focus mainly on the test to start off with. Your first test was actually against the old enemy. It was against England, which is always a special match anyway. I think if you played Tiddlywinks, it would be a special rivalry.
True.
But not only did you play against England in your debut, you scored 131. How proud did that make you?
Yeah, look, it was an interesting test match. And funnily, we were just chatting before we started this podcast that you went to Guildford to watch one of your first women's cricket matches. And I reckon it was the same ground. It was sort of the Guildford main oval.
Yeah.
And look, to be honest, John, the pitch was a road. The only thing that was missing was probably the white lines down the middle of it. So I'd love to say it was a seaming deck and it was tough and it was hard. But you couldn't, as a batter, you couldn't have asked for anything better. But England had put on a good score, Jan Britton and Charlotte Edwards, right at the start of her career.
Yeah.
And Jan Britton had a brilliant that series. We just could not get her out. She was one of the all-time greats. And we were in a little bit of trouble early doors. We'd sort of lost Belinda Clark and Lisa Kitely early and Karen Rolton. And I'd got together with Joanne Broadbent in the middle order. And I do remember the night before saying, because I knew I was going to bat at some stage that day, the old saying, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. I thought, okay, Jones, this is your opportunity. I knew we probably wouldn't play that many tests in my career. We had a 3-match series for this one. And it was at, the chance to actually pull on the baggy green, put on the vest with the coat of arms on it. There was all those little moments as you sort of build up to going out to bat. You sort of had to sort of just quash a little bit of it was just excitement. The heart rate sort of goes up.
Yeah.
It takes a while to sort of calm down. And we'd only played 2-day cricket. It was the longest sort of format that we played, getting ready for this test match as well. So that was sort of club cricket back home. So it really did test us because, we hadn't played for that sort of length of time and trying to create and build an innings and understand the sort of the ebbs and flows of a test match innings. You're sort of learning on your feet quite a bit. So it sort of got through to the 90s and I sort of thought to myself, I haven't hit a century before. And because we played so much short format cricket.
Right.
And I was sort of middle order for Victoria back then. I was batting 6. I never really got the opportunity. I thought, this could be my first ever century. Which I thought was really, really bizarre that your first could be, playing for your country. And I hit, I reckon, it was 2 overs. I faced 2 maidens and I'd hit cleanly the ball to nearly every fielder on the ground. And my teammates, Julia Price, who is a really good mate of mine, was the wicket keeper. She ran out of film almost. This is how old I am and how long ago it was. But it was the old time where you had 36 exposures and she, was taking a photo nearly every shot. Yeah, I can remember, I think about it now. And just that opportunity of, sort of raising the bat and taking, baggy green off. Yeah, not too many people get the opportunity of doing it. Yeah, it's something that'll live with me forever.
Oh, it's amazing to hear, and it gives you chills, someone just talking about it, The fact that you hadn't hit a century before, and obviously none of your doing it was the opportunity, because as you said, you only played 2-day cricket. The fact was you picked out every fielder, so I can imagine what was running through your mind. It's going to be one of them moments. So, yeah, the fact that you did it, and obviously you've got the laugh about it at the end. Obviously, not only is it a happy ending, you've got the laugh about it where your friend probably went through, as you said, 3 or 4 films to get the actual stroke. So,
this is it.
Fabulous to hear. Honestly, fabulous to hear. You actually only played 5 tests again. Probably not any of your doing. It's probably just the lack of opportunity and overseas games that were played at the time.
Yeah, 100%. It was Australia versus England. That was the only opportunity that you had to play any test matches. And then it came down to, we were all working full time at the time. So that tour, 98, was about 6 weeks. I remember people losing their jobs because they were taking so much time. You're taking leave. I was working part-time, so I could sort of negate that. But at the same point in time, you don't have any income coming in for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So the tours were pretty much always designed around trying to cram in as many one-day internationals as you possibly could play. New Zealand never played test matches at that when I was playing, and still don't to this day, which is, very sad and disappointing for the players there.
Yeah.
India weren't playing at the moment, or were very spasmodically. So, yes, you sort of, over a 8-year period within the Australian setup to play 5 test matches is quite sad in one sense, but completely, thoroughly enjoyable. And, wouldn't change the fact that I got to play 5 test matches either.
And you said about cramming the one days in, which gives us a link to the next question about one-day internationals. But I just want to finish off with a little stat, if that's all right, on your test career, because you played 5 tests, You got 251 runs, average of 35.85, 100 and 150, and I'm not buying they were all a road, because I guarantee in that test match you've just spoken about, not everybody got 131. So I just think that's fantastic. You know, you must sit back and look back at that and put a smile on your face.
Yeah, and I think of the enjoyment of test match cricket. It's hard for people that don't grow up on cricket, and I know a lot of your listeners are sort of, you know, football orientated sort of thing. Probably are thinking 5 days and there's no result. Why on earth would you do it?
Why'd you do that?
Yeah, exactly. My mum still has no idea about it at all. It's just, I think for test match cricket for me, and there is still so much enjoyment and draw because it's why it's called a test. It tests you in every single way. Your game plan, your mental application, your skill, and it's every single delivery. And it can be in, you know, one of the 50 that I got was up in Sydney, and it was stifling. Sydney's a very humid city. We'd played in the Gabba the week before, and, you know, you're in 38 degrees with 90% humidity. And it's got to be switched on for every single delivery, whether you're in the field or batting or bowling. Yeah. And that is something with your mates as well. You know, it probably is the most individual team sport going around, because at that point of contact, it's, you know, the bowler versus the batter, but you're out there with your mates, and you getting other people through, or them getting you through, you know, tough moments is, you know, one of the beautiful parts of the sport that I love.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head there. It's called test match, and it does test you, which is why I look at it as an outsider, if that makes sense. I play a little bit of cricket, you know, with the family or with my mates. I'm okay, but I'm not a cricketer, if that makes sense. But that's why, for me, you see all the best players performing consistently. Everyone's going to have a bad run, and then the players that are good, but you're unsure if they're test quality, play a good innings and have 3 or 4 bad ones. Do you know what I mean? But the top ones always come to the party when it's required.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you look at the way cricket is at the moment, and, you know, there's so much talk and sort of investment in sort of the shorter formats in T20, you still look at T20 and the people that have dominated that. All those players have had magnificent test match careers. So if you go back, and Chris Gale, if you talk about the men's side of it, because they've played more test matches, but Chris Gale and Brendan McCullum, two that spring to mind, who everyone goes, oh, T20, that's all they've played on. You look at their test careers. Yeah. You know, double and triple hundred, they've hit a lot of balls. So their skill set and their ability to dominate the T20 game has come off the fact of, I personally believe, I love and want, you know, playing a lot of longer format.
I agree. Just from an England point of view, you look at T20 and the one-day internationals, and obviously being 50 over world champions at the moment. And even though, you know, the captain, Morgs at the time, he came up with some good innings, and Roy and Butler and Bairstow, it was still Stokes that got them over the line, but the actual team was built round Joe Root's ability to bat 50 overs. Yeah. You know, and that's the way I see it. Everyone likes to go out and see sixes, but for England to be successful, they needed the Joe Root at the time, doesn't it? I mean, I think the game's moved forward again since then. So you're 100% correct, and it is the test players that actually excel at the shorter format as well.
It's for bowlers as well. Like, I look at Josh Hazlewood at the moment, who's you know, predominantly been playing test match cricket for Australia, and he's the number 1 T20 bowler in the world at the moment. And no one would have ever thought that would have been the case.
No, you're right. And again, another great example and a lovely link into the other part of your career, which was the one-day internationals. You played an amazing 61 times for your country and scored over 1,000 runs. I mean, how amazing's that?
Yeah, look, it's, you know, I look back on it, and it's funny when I look back on my ODI career, so many of the moments that sort of spring to mind aren't specifically about me and my batting. I don't know if that says a lot about my contributions to the team or not, but I played with an amazing era of players. So until this recent Australian team, who went on a 26-game run, which is now the new world record across men's and women's, we held the record of 17 straight. And I played with some of the absolute superstars of the game, like Belinda Clark, who's ICC Hall of Fame. Lisa Kitely opened, who was...
She was England coach,
Shelley Nitschke, who's now coach of the Australian women's team. She played in it. Catherine Fitzpatrick was probably, you know, one of the fastest bowlers that the game's seen. It was Karen Rolton, ridiculously good. Like, it was just this unbelievably talented team, and so you were learning from the best in the business. It was training. You know, trainings were, you get in the nets and you're thinking, this is tough. You'd come out battered and bruised, but absolutely loving it. You know, we toured to India and to England. You know, in India we toured with trains, planes, automobiles were on overnight trains going places, so it was the adventures as well that you'd have that is so different to, teams touring now where they're flying business class and got their own rooms and all this sort of stuff. It just wasn't the case back then.
No.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, and again, amazing. As I said, good stats in both of them. Obviously a very, very good career. We have just touched on the fact that you only played 5 tests because of the lack of opportunity, but it must make you very happy and perhaps ecstatic that the women's game is moving forward across the world. There's obviously lots more to be done. And I interviewed Lizelle Lee about 3 years ago, just before COVID, and even South Africa were like, we don't really have any practice. Do you know what I mean? And I think the West Indies didn't have much practice either. Obviously, there's a lot more to be done, but it must make you happy seeing greater strides being made.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, John, where you kind of pinch myself daily on the fact that I'm still working and people are going to pay me to go around the world and talk about cricket and being able to see the women's game where it is at the moment. I mean, we've got some of the most talented athletes going around the game. There's investment in them to actually see their absolute true potential, which is fantastic to see. We've got emerging nations coming through, so it's not just Australia, England and India these days. The West Indies are coming through, South Africa, as you mentioned, are coming through, Pakistan and Bangladesh, almost the sleeping giants within women's cricket. We're seeing things like paternal and maternal policies which are allowing the likes of Lizelle Lee to stay in the game because there's support in around athlete welfare and the like. So all those things you pinch yourself and go, I cannot believe that I started playing this game where I didn't know there was an Australian women's cricket team, to now people not just knowing the team, they can list off, boys and girls, list off all the players and their stats and all those sorts of things. So yeah, you do get buoyed by that. Grounds getting sold out. I was at T20 Women's World Cup final at the G, 86,174 people sitting there watching this magnificent game. So you get excited about it, but then also because of the advancement of the game, there's also still, a variety of different pushback and backlash and then, things where potentially the rush to push it forward, we just miss a few things. And so there's still a little bit of, frustration at times about where the game's going and who's controlling those decisions and the like as well. And I think that goes for women's football or any other women's sport where it's come through and there's still very much a men's lens administrationally on the decision making. And I'm still very cognizant of the fact that we still need to have some women's voices at the table to decide where the women's game is going.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and it's almost like they almost have to be perfect when nobody's perfect,
Yeah.
True, they do shoot themselves in the foot. There was an incident last weekend between England and India, which might not have been good for the game, which perhaps we can chat about a bit later on to get your views on it.
Yeah.
But there's been so much backlash. Whether you think it was ethical or not, no rules are broken, but there's been so much backlash and hate. It's almost like the women's game has taken a step back because of it, which is wrong, There's loads of worse things that go on in the men's game. Football as well, it's a shame because it almost feels like they have to be perfect when that's just not life.
Yeah, no, 100%.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Oh yeah, you're mindful that it's human nature sometimes, sadly, that people are ready to pull people down. It's that tall poppy syndrome or whatever space it is. And so, happy to chat about the run out between England and India.
Thank you.
It does bring up a lot of questions, doesn't it?
But just again, diverting to the side of something that you brought up. A couple of years ago, I interviewed Lesiho Poe from South Africa. In fact, done a couple of interviews with her. One of the most interesting things she was talking to me was about the battle she had to not only get her foot in the door, but once the foot was in the door, then from the top to keep trying to bat away these women aren't good enough suggestions.
Yeah, and it's just funny too, because I see it at every level, whether on the board of Cricket Australia at the moment, and not to say it's happened at cricket, but I'm saying it, whether it's a governance level or an administration level or a playing level or a volunteer level, is that I see incompetent men all the time, as much as I see incompetent women, but all of a sudden one woman is incompetent and they all are.
Yeah.
Whereas, I've seen companies fall over each and every week and the board is full of men and the CEO is a man and the president's a man, and you're like, there doesn't seem to be the backlash that, oh, he's a man, he shouldn't be doing the job.
Yeah,
but all of a sudden you flip that to a woman in the position and it's a different narrative.
Yeah, it is. And for me, sometimes they put the wrong people in the wrong places because they're trying to look good. They're not doing it for the right reason. If you're good enough, it wouldn't matter to me if it was for men, for women, for white people, for black people. To me, it doesn't matter. You've got to be good. And especially in England, there's been a few bigger games, whether it be cricket, football or anything, where they probably put the wrong person in just to try and look good, rather than putting the best person in. And sometimes, again, I think that puts more pressure on women, you know.
Yeah.
But it is good. Brings us back into another link. We're going to move on to now your second career as a commentator. You could potentially argue with your CV, you've almost matched what you did as a player, which is staggering. I mean, life must be pretty good at the moment.
Well, I'm prepping for the T20 Men's World Cup and the Women's Big Bash at the moment.
Wow.
And I sort of giggled to myself because you're covering, like, which I think is the best women's domestic competition in the world, and, you know, an ICC Men's World Cup as well. And you're like, how did I get here? Like, it's just kind of, how did this all kind of happen? And this is, like you say, it's my second career, but, I mean, the funny thing is in between it all, I was a PE teacher as well. I worked for Cricket Victoria and game development for 5 years. I did 5 years of work with TLA Worldwide as an athlete manager as well. So, you know, I've had all these different points in between sort of the playing and now the commentating. I love that too, because it's just all these different lived experiences too, which I hope is a value add on air, because you can sort of bring in a variety of different touch points rather than just me being a player.
Exactly. And again, it goes back to the point about putting the right people in the right seats, because you have got that knowledge. As I said, you know, you talk cricket now, you know Mel Jones if you say your name, and, you know, you've got a great flow, knowledge when you commentate, which again is great for anybody who wants to become a commentator. As you said, your prior working and learning things like that is just perfect for what you're trying to do now.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That's lovely to hear, because I think for me, I never planned on being a full-time commentator. It was purely a hobby, you know. And so when all of a sudden you're like, well, this is your full-time job, you're like, okay, you know, what is it we're going to do? And I think a lot for me is you want the audience to leave, you know, whatever space and time they've been with you, whether it's 5 minutes as they've just flicked on to get the score, or they're sitting down for the entire day of a game. You want them to go away going, well, I learnt something about the game or about broader life or whatever. So they've been sort of educated in a sense, but they've been entertained, they've had a bit of fun, but they've been engaged, and they feel as if they're almost sitting next to you in the commentary box and just having a chat, or on the couch in your lounge room having a chat about the game as well.
That's exactly it, and that's what we get from you, Mel, and that's just me talking as an outsider, and that's exactly what we get from you, is that when something needs to be discussed, you're right in it. You tell us exactly a professional's point of view from it, rather than just commentating on the game. Yeah,
it's a balance too, because I don't know if people sort of know the commentary box for cricket, but you sort of got your lead that calls the ball and what actually happens, sort of thing, and then the expert jumps in and comes in with the colour of it. And so those two roles are quite different too. So it's important that, I think, you know, anyone getting into the business is that they sort of understand those 2 points of difference, so that you've got two voices coming in, hopefully talking about the one incident, but may have a completely different point of view, because millions of people watch cricket. Not everyone's going to see it the same way.
Exactly.
So it's nice to hear that sort of point of difference.
Yeah, fabulous. And just something you touched on, that you started off as a hobby. You started in 2001 on comms for Sky in England, but it was only one game per year, probably again because of the lack of games. And it was really 2009, you know, you hosted the ICC Women's World Cup in Sydney, 7 matches. And then later on, a few years ago, you actually became a full-time commentator, and you've really taken off since then. Yeah,
look, and I've probably actually enjoyed bits and pieces all the way through until having to make that decision too, because most of it started with women's cricket. You mentioned 2001. I'd got dropped from the Aussie team, and the girls were touring England, and I was working with Surrey Cricket at the time, and Sky needed an Australian voice and someone who knew the players, so asked me. And I said no. And they went, what do you mean? I went, well, why would I want to commentate on a game that I want to be playing in? That's just painful.
That's a fair point.
And they said, and they said, oh, it's 300 quid. And I said, tell me where, when and what to wear.
Yeah.
I was like,
when
that
was it?
more than all the players were getting paid put together, because no one was getting paid a cent. And I thought, I'm going to have one up on these girls.
Perhaps this commentary life isn't too bad.
Yeah. It was one of those days you sort of had no idea what I was doing, and I thought, it's one game, that's it. And, go back to your day job, Jones.
Yeah.
And then it gradually got, 1 game to 2 games a year. And it just sort of was just a drip feeding.
Yeah.
And because of all the drip feeding, more opportunities arise for women in commentary, and more so in the men's game. It was the IPL in 2014 when they got Isha Gua, Lisa Saleka, Andrew Chopra and myself on. There was the fact that I'd done the games with Sky Sport and a few games with Channel 9 in Australia, that they sort of knew that I'd commentated a little bit and, won't stuff up horrendously on it. Yeah, so they gave me a shot. Yeah, it sort of took off from there to the point where I had to make a decision between work as an athlete manager and commentating full time.
Yeah, fabulous. Made the right choice, I would say. And then this year, you were part of the Sky Sports team that commentated on the English summer. That must have been special, and you'd be proud of yourself to actually do.
Yeah, massively. And Sky are an amazingly super organisation on the cricket front to work with. There's, great banter in the commentary box, but also really good analysis of the game. And you've got the likes of Nasser Hussain and Mark Butcher and Mike Atherton in terms of the test match side of things, throw in Kumar Sangakkara. When you're off there, you're in the, the breakout room and you're chatting cricket, and it's just, people would give a kidney to, swap positions kind of thing. And it's a wonderful learning curve for all of us, because we all bring a different point of view to it all the time. And then you get into all the other games, the 100 and women's internationals, and you got the likes of Ebony Rainford Brent, Lydia Greenway, who you've played against or played with at Surrey.
Yeah.
And, sorry, this is going to sound a bit, toppy, but it's, it's almost a family in a sense, because you've played with each other, you've grown up watching each other. Then you get this opportunity of, hopefully bringing some enjoyment to other people to come in and watch the game as well. But, they're fantastic to work with. They're a really brave organisation to talk about things outside of cricket as well. They gave Mikey Holding and Ebbs the platform to talk about Black Lives Matter a couple of years ago. And so that they're an organisation that care about the individual and want to make it as inclusive as they possibly can as well, which is lovely. Yeah,
fabulous. And just touching back to when you said it was a bit soppy, but you can all relate back to when you were playing and how much better it is now. That obviously gives you that insight and probably fuels your passion a little bit more to really push the game on.
Yeah, I never want to be one of those people saying, oh, back in my day, because you get the old eye roll going, you really are old now, Jones,
Yeah.
But it's nice for people to know where the game has come from and the gains it made. And, we had the wonderful moment at Lord's during the test match where the Rachel Hayhoe Flint gates were opened for the very first time. And she was an icon and a pioneer and a trailblazer, all those words of our game. Yet still not a lot of people know about her. But now all of a sudden the imagery of the gates at Lord's that were closed to women for, hundreds of years.
Absolutely.
She pushed for membership in the MCC for women, and now these gates are open to literally every demographic.
Absolutely brilliant. And we've mentioned about how things are going well at the moment. You're getting paid to commentate on a sport that you love. But when you're commentating on Australia, is it difficult to remain unbiased or even have a sneaky cheer or celebrate when things go well?
It's funny, isn't it? People ask me about this. And the other thing people ask me about is not swearing on air.
Right.
Because if I'm watching a game in my lounge room and, it might be Australia and you're passionate about it, you can come out with a couple of expletives or you're yelling at the TV and all of a sudden there's a mic in front of you. The ability just to not do it. And I think it's like when I was a teacher, once the kids are in the room, there's just a switch in your head, isn't it, that you just sort of switch off and you know what you can and can't say. I think for me, as much as I completely love the Aussie team and the players, and I'm on the board of Cricket Australia, so of course I want them to do well, I'm still very much at the heart of it about the sport and about the competition, and I love seeing great competition. So if the Aussie team fall over the line, or don't fall over the line, then it's a great game.
Yes.
I'm invested in the game because my job, again, is people are listening from all around the world. So
of course
they don't want to be hearing a biased voice.
Yeah, great for.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So my job is to be as even as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And people know that I'm Australian and I cheer for them. I hope they feel as if though when I'm commentating, I'm as even as I possibly can.
I can't honestly say it was meant as a directive at you. It was just a wonder, really. It's funny how when you're in your own environment at home, how things are totally different.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm the one, when I'm watching cricket on TV, I actually don't watch it as a commentator. I just watch it as a fan.
Yeah.
Which I find, I don't know if I should be or shouldn't be, because I should be probably looking at sometimes, should I have said this for that? I really don't. When I'm watching it, I'm purely Mel Jones fan of the game.
Yeah.
Immersed in what's happening.
I think that's good because I think it shows that you're passionate, and I think that comes through subconsciously in your commentating, that you can watch it.
Okay, yeah.
You're a fan sort of thing.
I hadn't thought about it. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's always good. So we're going to just touch on a couple of other little things to do with cricket. Is there a type of player that excites you more than others? You know, as an England fan, Gower, Cook, Root, Anderson, I've probably forgotten hundreds. But the ones, you know, like Bosun was an icon, Flintoff was an icon. And now, potentially, dare I say it and not get shoot down, probably the best of the lot, for me, is Ben Stokes. He's a must-watch for us and my kids. Is there a type of player that does it for you?
Yeah. Interestingly, it's not always the icons or the best players.
No.
So I love watching young players at the start of their career finding their way.
Yeah.
Because you could be watching the start of something really, really special.
Yes.
You know, I look at two players for Australia at the moment, both all-rounders, Talia McGrath and Cam Green.
Cam Green.
So they've come through the national system, and you look at the way in which they're quite similar in their personalities. They're both quite introverts that can completely change the game at a blink of an eye with either bat or ball. There's something exciting about them. And I love watching young players navigate coming through into a national team, taking on the best in the world. They haven't fully formed their tactics and game plans and mental approaches and skills and all those things yet, but they're finding a way.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about sport, and that's what the best of the best do, isn't it? That they're out in the middle, they're getting tested ball after ball, and they're finding their own way and their own journey with support around them. So that excites me to see how they do that.
That's fabulous. For me, again, apart from players that I've mentioned, it's almost like when you get a youngster that is lauded up to be the next best thing and they struggle when they come through. And I can think of Joe Root when he was either asked or told to open against Australia in the Ashes, which didn't work.
Yeah.
What a fabulous batsman he is. And Ben Stokes in that final when I think Brathwaite hit 4 sixes, I think, off him. Again, could have ruined him. And that's what I like. You know, I agree with you. I teach youngsters at football, so all the youngsters are great, but there's always extra pressure if you're the next best thing, as it were. And if they struggle or have a real down point, but then fight back and you see the champion in them, that really does put a smile on my face. Yeah,
massively. Like, I look at England cricket at the moment. Alice Capsey and Harry Brook spring to mind from the men's and the women's game.
Yeah.
Doing phenomenally well, both in their very fledgling careers within the England setup. And there'll be a point where it's not going to go well for them. That's the nature of the sport. There's not too many players that go through their career without getting dropped and not having lulls and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So to see them at the start of their career and, you know, hopefully at the back end of their career and being able to talk about how they navigated that, is something pretty special. And, you know, you hope they go on and absolutely dominate against every other team except for Australia.
Yeah, of course. And obviously some people do land running. One that springs to mind for me, and you could probably name hundreds more than me, is Marnus Labuschagne in the Ashes. He only got called into the team because Steve Smith got hit in the head and had to miss a game, and then suddenly they had to play them both. I don't know if he'd have played that series if Australia had kept winning, because Steve Smith was just, I think he could have hit something with a badminton racket, I think. But it's great to see them, as you said. You know, you mentioned Cam Green. I think there's a young guy called Janssen for South Africa. He looks quite mobile.
Janssen,
quite mobile, quite exciting. And there's loads. And obviously in the women's game, I mean, India are improving rate of knots, you know, the IPL. Yeah, so it's great to see. I totally agree with you. And continuing, obviously, in the summer, you got to commentate on the word that nobody's allowed to say, I think, is it Bazball? But obviously the Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes partnership. How refreshing is that to see? Or are you of the opinion that's just a bit too wild?
Oh, no, I don't think it's wild at all. I think it's almost, in a sense, a natural progression if you were brave enough to take it on, because the amount of white ball and T20 cricket we're playing anyways. So at some point, there is going to be a little bit more aggression and proactive sort of approaches to things, I think, because that's what a lot of the players are playing. So I also think that there is still a balance between, we saw it from New Zealand to a sense, and South Africa in patches as well, where they dominated sessions.
Yes.
That old school style traditional test match cricket still has a place as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a wonderful phase of play over the next few years between teams trying to go, what's our style of play and how do we want to play it?
Yeah.
And how do we temper it? Like I said, Aussie men's team went to Pakistan recently for the first time in 24 years, and they absolutely loved the tour, but the pitches over there were flat.
Were they?
Didn't offer it. They didn't change their game plan, regardless of the result over the 3 test matches, and they ended up winning that series. There is still something there about backing your game plan and not feeling as if you have to then do something special and extraordinary every session or second session. And that's going to be the challenge for test match teams.
And I like the flexibility they're now showing, because clearly Zach Crawley is a talent, but he was really struggling, and they almost let him go back into his shell to build an innings. They weren't pressuring him to be like that, even though they want him to be. And you mentioned great games earlier on, doesn't matter who win. Obviously, Headingley with Ben Stokes is one, and I think he got 2 from his first...
Did you have to bring that up?
Sorry, I think he got 2 from his first 50 balls that inning. So you're right. Even the most destructive of people sometimes have to play the conditions.
Yeah, 100%. And so the phrase I hate when a player says is, oh, it's just my game.
Yeah.
You know, and that's their excuse to going out off a rash shot or, you know, trying to move the game on. And I'm like, oh, no, well, if that is your game, I feel as if you're not going to be playing that well, because the best players know what their game is, but also know when to bring it in, when to really push it and step back a little bit. That's Ben Stokes does that really, really well. Yeah,
as an English lover of cricket and sport, he is just phenomenal. And it's just great to see England cricket being lauded rather than being called boring and getting success as well. I know it's not great, and the Ashes will probably dampen that next year, but I think it'll be a great matchup.
Oh no, this coming Ashes, your summer 2023, is, I think there was already an excitement in the summer gone with everything that was going on. As much as, you know, England were winning against South Africa and New Zealand, I think everyone was thinking, we've got the Aussies in the next 12 months. I think, which is great. I mean, this is what you want, isn't it? You want people getting excited about test match cricket. We've got 5 tests. And if this style of play goes for 5 days, that is 30 days of jaw-dropping, don't leave your couch kind of stuff, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I always try and go to one. I never go to the first one, because I always make sure I watch the first ball of the first day and the build-up on television, because you get to see everything, don't you? Do you know what I mean? You get to see all the replays and everything.
Yeah. I don't want you to edit this out, but my maths is obviously horrendous, because 5 tests at 5 days would be 25 days, not 30. So
don't worry, English weather, they might have to start bringing in a 6th, you never know.
Bring in a reserve day, there we go, I love it.
Although, knowing the way England play, it'll probably be 15 days of cricket, whatever the result is.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
We finish off this week's show with our famous SLB Sports Roundup, featuring golf, horse racing, darts, snooker, motorsport, NBA and football. Golf, we start with the PGA Tour, and it's the Mexico Championship from the Vidanta Velata, and it was won by Tony Finau on -24, beating hot favourite Jon Rahm by 3 shots. Third place back to Brandon Wu on -19. This week it's the Wells Fargo Championship from the Quail Hole Golf Course in North Carolina. The DP World Tour held the Korea Championship from the Jack Nicklaus Golf Course in Korea, and it was won by Pedro Lazarabao on -12, 2 shots clear of Morgan Hellinclyde on -10, with a 3-way tie 1 shot further back by S.H. Park, Scott Jameson and Juice Luton. This week it's the Italian Open from the Marco Simeone Golf Course in Italy. The LPGA held the JM Eagle LA Championship from the Wilshire Country Club in California. It was won by Hannah Green after a 3-way playoff with Lin Zhu and Aditi Ashok. On the first hole, Hannah getting the lowest score and winning the title. They all finished on -9. They're back next in 2 weeks' time for the Upper Montclair Country Club in New Jersey. Horse racing. The Bet365 Chase was the big race from last weekend, and it was won by the previous week's Scottish national winner Kitty's Light, and the Celebration Chase was won by the up-and-coming brilliant star Jean Bon. This week it's Guineas weekend in England at Newmarket. 2,000 guineas, we've given you Auguste Rodin, Little Big Bear and Chaldine for a while. Focus on Auguste Rodin. I think the ground will come right for him and he looks a superstar in the making. He could win the guineas on the way to winning the Derby as well. The 1,000 guineas for the fillies, Tahira and Remark. Tahira is one we've been following all winter. We're not sure if Mediate from Aidan O'Brien's is going to run or is going to wait for the French or the Irish guineas. If she does, she'll put up to Tahira. Remark is one that come out of the pack in one of the trials, has a great chance. Darts, Premier League, night 13 in Leeds. Michael Smith gets another win, beating Gerwyn Price 6-4 in the final. Michael Smith 5 points, Gerwyn Price 3 points. The two semi-finalists as always get 2 points each, Peter Wright and Nathan Aspinall. Gerwyn Price leads the table on 33 points. Michael van Gerwen is second on 29. Michael Smith third on 23. Nathan Aspinall back in the top 4 with 22. This week it's night 14 from Manchester. Snooker and the World Championships from the Crucible was finalised last weekend, with young Luca Bressel from Belgium beating Mark Selby 18-15 in a really good final that also included a 147 for the beaten finalist. Motorsport, we start on two wheels. MotoGP held the Spanish Grand Prix and it was won by Frankie Bagnaia, the current world champion for Ducati Lenovo team. Brad Binder was second and Jack Miller were third in a great weekend for the KTM outfit. They're back next 14th of May with the French Grand Prix from the Bugatti circuit. World Superbikes, they're back this weekend. Catalunya round from the circuit to Barcelona. British Superbikes held round 2 with races 4, 5 and 6 from Alton Park using the international circuit. The sprint race was won by Josh Brooks for the FHO Racing BMW. Leon Haslam was second for the Rokit BMW. Glenn Irwin was third on the Beer Monster Ducati. Race 2 was won by Tommy Bridewell on the Beer Monster Ducati. Glenn Irwin, his teammate, was second and Leon Haslam was third. Then race 3 was won by Glenn Irwin on his Beer Monster Ducati. Leon Haslam was second, completing 3 podiums in 3 races this weekend. And Carl Ride sneaked into third to gain a podium for the OMG Racing Yamaha team. Glenn Irwin is leader of the standings, 91 points. Josh Brooks is second on 87 and Tommy Bridewell is third on 87. They're back for round 3, races 7, 8 and 9 from Donington Park in 2 weeks' time. Speedway Grand Prix round 1, finally from Croatia, and it was won by Bartosz Smarzlik, who gained 20 points, the current world champion going for a 4th title. Robert Lambert of England was second on 18, Freddie Lindgren was third on 16. One to note is that Ty Wolfenden looked the best in this round he has done for many years, and should have got to the final but made a mistake while holding second place in the semi. They're back next on the 13th of May with round 2 from Warsaw in Poland. NASCAR, it was a Worth 400 from Dover International Speedway. It was won by Martin Truex Jr., driving the Toyota Camry for Joe Gibbs Racing. Ross Chastain was second, Chevy Camaro for Trackhouse Racing, and Ryan Blaney was third, driving the Ford Mustang for Team Penske. They're back next week with the Advent Health 400 from Kansas Speedway. IndyCar were also racing with the Children's of Alabama Indy Grand Prix, and it was won by Scott McLaughlin from Team Penske. Second, Roman Grosjean Andretti Autosport, and third, Will Power from Team Penske. They're back on the 13th of May with the GM Grand Prix from the road course of the Brickyard in Indianapolis. They use the first 2 corners of the Indianapolis 500 course and then the road course in the middle. Formula E is back this weekend with the highlight of their season, the Monaco E-Prix. Formula 1 was in Baku. They had a sprint race and a Grand Prix. The sprint race was won by Sergio Perez of Red Bull. Second was Charles Leclerc of Ferrari. Third, Max Verstappen of Red Bull after a tussle with George Russell. The Grand Prix was also won by Sergio Perez. Second place, Max Verstappen. Third place, Charles Leclerc. The standings see Max Verstappen still out in front on 93 points, but his lead has been cut to 6 by his teammate Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc in third on 60. This week it's the inaugural Miami Grand Prix from the Miami International Autodrome. The NBA, and we're into the conference semi-finals. The Celtics play the 76ers, the Knicks play the Heat, the Nuggets play the Suns, and the Golden State Warriors play the Lakers. Steph Curry versus LeBron James, both having great wins in their quarter-final series. We finish with football. Match day 34's results. Crystal Palace 4, West Ham 3. Brighton 6, Wolverhampton 0. Brentford 2, Nottingham Forest 1, Manchester United 1, Aston Villa 0, Fulham 1, Manchester City 2, Bournemouth 4, Leeds 1, Newcastle 3, Southampton 1, Liverpool 4, Tottenham 3, Leicester 2, Everton 2, and Arsenal versus Chelsea is a result we can bring you. Some catch-up fixtures midweek, match day 28, Liverpool versus Fulham, Manchester City versus West Ham, Brighton versus Manchester United, and match day 35 fixtures this weekend. Bournemouth versus Chelsea, Manchester City versus Leeds, Wolverhampton versus Aston Villa, Tottenham versus Crystal Palace, Liverpool versus Brentford, Newcastle versus Arsenal, West Ham versus Manchester United, Fulham versus Leicester, Brighton versus Everton, and Nottingham Forest versus Southampton. With the season coming to a close, Manchester City are now top of the league, played 32 with 76 points. Arsenal are second, played 33 with 75 points. Newcastle are third, also played 33 with 65 points, and Manchester United fourth, played 32 with 63 points. That's our SLB Sports Roundup. Well, I want to say that's it for another great show. Thank you so much to Mel Jones. What a superstar lady she is, having 2 successful careers, and she's a real inspiration for all youngsters wanting to get into sport and media, or even to have 2 careers. Thank you to you, the listeners. You are amazing, and we love the fact you keep tuning in. And then to Johan, Rafaela, and the whole team at UK Health Radio. We'll see you all next week.